Hi. Try to get All right, welcome back. I'm going to talk about codeine today. Codeine is probably the world's #1 opioid. It's a World Health Organization opioid. That means it's kind of got to be available. It's got to be around, and it is. It's readily available throughout the entire world, so access isn't a problem at all. It's well known, well studied. It's historical. It goes back to 1820, and it's just one of those drugs that's got a story. So this is the story. All right, it gets kind of figured out basically through human history. It came from the poppy plant, and cut a little on the side of the bulb, and stuff drips out, and in its kind of pure form, you can get 1 to 5% maybe opioid effect. But if it's processed like it was in the 1820s, it goes well beyond just a little bit effective. It can be quite effective. What happens to codeine is it's metabolized, and there's a couple of pathways with the opioids that are important. One is the 2D6 and the cytochrome P450 system. Vroom, vroom, and your liver gets rid of stuff. That's important for codeine. You might be a hypermetabolizer. You might be a slow metabolizer. Everybody reacts a little different to medications. This is one of them. And it also can go through 3A. So if you have drugs that are interfering with the 2D6 system, it might go a little more to 3A. But the key about codeine is it gets metabolized to what? Morphine. It goes to Mr. Morphine and a morphine metabolite, M6. But the key here is how you look at codeine within the context of being treated with it. And as a consumer, this is important because in this world that we live in, we do drug screens. And with codeine, we will see codeine in the drug screen. We'll see morphine in the drug screen. Well, inexperienced people or inexperienced providers, those that interpret sometimes these drug screens, will come to the erroneous conclusion, you're taking morphine. I didn't prescribe that. It's not true. It's metabolized to morphine. That's the potency of codeine. But does morphine go to codeine? No. So if you have a prescription for morphine and codeine is detected, you would have had to take morphine and codeine. Clear as mud, I know. But that's the art of interpreting lab data. But more importantly, it's information. You need information to be the best consumer possible with these medications because they're all items of risk. And so there's hypervigilance, especially in this opioid epidemic crisis. We also have a pain crisis going on. We need to treat pain. So this is the key with codeine. It's inexpensive. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's used to treat cough. It's used to treat pain. It's used to treat a number of other maladies throughout history, including anxiety, laudanum. If you haven't heard of laudanum, it's important to kind of go back in history and find out, if you're on this drug, what around the turn of the last century people were doing with these drugs. They were making them into tinctures, and laudanum was one of them. And a couple of famous treatises came out of them where it was understood pretty quickly these are habit forming. There were specific places people could go before the Harrison Narcotic Act, topic for another story, that was in the early century, last century. And you could just go get this stuff. You could smoke this stuff. You could get your hands on this stuff from poppy. And so Poppy has been important since probably recorded time. Has it been always used for pain? Nope. It's a potential drug of abuse. Codeine is one of those that needs to be monitored. No big deal. Using for legitimate medical need, a legitimate prescription is appropriate. It's a pure mu opioid agonist. So that means it sits on that receptor and it causes an effect through a G protein. It's not important, but it causes a cellular effect. And that cellular effect is all those potential side effects and effects you can get from any opioid. I don't like this part. Well, I itch and I scratch my nose, I scratch, and that's a histamine release. It's not an allergy, probably. And codeine does that. A lot of opioids do that. I get little pinpoint pupils if I take a lot. Constipation, somnolence, weird name for a guy gets sleepy. Who came up with that name? And you can have a number of other side effects that depend on you. And that's the key with any opioid. Start slow, go slow, move up carefully. It's recognized to be a good pain relief medication. But to avoid other side effects, you got to know what else people are taking on my end. And on your end, the consumer, you've got to give that list or bring a bag with all your meds. I don't care if, it's a celebratory drug for the St. Snivels Day parade. It's in your bag so that the doctor or healthcare provider can look and see everything you potentially have, because interactions with any opioid are important and significant. All right, so that's a little brief thing about codeine. I'm going to give you a sidebar here. I don't use much codeine. I don't particularly like it. The reason is it causes a lot of nausea too in some people. It's just not as clean as some of the other pain medicines I use. It's readily available and nice to have, but a lot of people, they just get that gut pain. They get that nausea. And that's from the chemotactic zone right there in the brainstem. It's what happens, and it's not everybody. It's probably not a lot of people, but it's there. So if I can avoid a side effect with an alternative that I think is safe and it's appropriate, it's not an arm and a leg expensive, yeah, I'll use it. But I mean, codeine has to be used and has to be available. It is effective. There's no question about it being effective. So that's a little thing on codeine. I also have a podcast, Pain Information. A lot of stuff in there. Check it out. And I'll keep this drug series going a little longer. I'd like to talk about muscle relaxer, gabapentinoid. This is rule 4, right? Know thy drugs. Definitely NSAIDs. One of the big problems that we have this day and age in medicine that people don't really respect is NSAIDs. NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they're potentially toxic, sometimes more toxic than the other pain medicines you can get that people are reluctant to prescribe. So leave us a comment, read them all. I'd love to hear from you. And any topic you want to hear, I'm happy to do it. Thanks.